if you're seeing this video. My name is Taylor, if you don't. So I'm going to be talking about my dad, some childhood trauma, a lot of those types of things in some of these videos. My main motivation for making this video series, because I'm going to be chronicling my dad's illness and being in the hospital and all those types of things. My main motivation for me for doing this is to really help me to remember the details of the story, because I find that as more time goes on and as more things come out, because this is a very complicated story, I tend to lose a lot of the details and I tend to forget about certain things, and then my mom will be like, oh yeah, this happened. She'll mention something that'll unlock something for me. So I really want to try to keep as many of these details as much as I possibly can. So that's really one of the main motivations for me doing this. Another thing is maybe that I'll be able to process through some of this, because this has been a lot to unpack and to process through. But also another motivation for doing this is to really potentially explain to others. My dad lied to a lot of people, unfortunately. So while I'm trying to kind of discover the truth about, what actually was, I also would like to kind of help others discover that truth, so we can, just kind of start from scratch and not have any of this, any lies kind of obfuscating the truth anymore. So I'm going to start with a big spoiler. My dad is deceased. So again, if you're watching this video and you're a family or a friend, you know this already. I've probably already reached out to you. My dad is deceased, so I'm really going to try to tell this story and kind of chronicle the story of his passing chronologically as best as I can, in order. So, but I have to start with this piece of information, just that my dad is deceased, because again, this is a big motivation for me to do this. In some ways, I think it might be a little bit poetic of me, but I really do believe that the truth will set you free, and there's that saying, right? My dad, again, lied a lot, and so if that saying is true, then his soul is probably pretty tethered here. He is not a free man, based on a lot of the lies, as we'll kind of go through more later on. So my goal is to kind of, help him to tell the truth. He was never really able to do that in life. No matter what kind of came his way, he was just never really able to quite accomplish that. So I'm going to try to help him to tell the truth, and we're going to do this together. So I've gotten a lot of kind of mixed reactions on how I should handle this whole situation, because it's been a lot. Again, my friends and my family have all been really supportive and helpful, but they all provide very different advice on how they think I should handle this. I've never really been one for advice in general, just because I think you can never quite... Advice is usually just something redressed from a past situation that somebody else has gone through. And so you might be able to take bits and pieces of that information and adapt it to you. But advice, just kind of by and large, you're not going to be able to exact copy paste the way that I think most people hope that you will when they're offering it. So yeah, never been one for advice, but I've taken a lot in of what they've said, and have tried to figure out what feels authentic to me on how to handle this. So some people tell me to say nothing, right? They want me to kind of glorify his memory. I think this is really common. I read Jeanette McCurdy's book, I'm glad my mom died before my dad passed, and that super duper resonated with me. But on top of that, I've never really believed in glorifying people when they've passed on. I think that we're all human, and so to pretend like they were anything other than that and to ignore their flaws and their faults really just does everybody kind of a disservice. Can be very invalidating to the emotions and to the trauma that they may have inflicted upon you. So I try not to do that in general, but a lot of people have kind of encouraged me to take that approach and just say, you know what, you're going to hear people ask you questions about lies that your dad's told about you, or just things in general, and you should really just let people believe that. You should just let people kind of live in that fantasy land and keep that memory of him alive. But that just doesn't feel quite right to me. Another thing that people encouraged me to do is to kind of release a blanket statement. So I'm going to take part of that, but that's not really my intention for doing these videos. I would really like to speak directly with as many people as I possibly can about the lies that my father has told. So again, like I'm going to tell you the story chronologically from beginning to end of his passing months, just because it's a lot to unpack and it'll make it a lot easier for people to kind of process through. But yeah, I would still like to just directly talk to people about any lies that my dad has told, just because I understand it is in some ways very re-traumatizing, right? Every time I talk to somebody and they bring up something that my dad said that was a lie, and I have to sit there and correct them about it, it is very re-traumatizing, because it just, opens up that wound all over again. Like, oh, my dad lied about me. I have to kind of, in the past, when I was younger, I felt like I had to cover up for him. I felt like I had to lie for him, try to, again, just cover and protect his image however I could. So in not doing that anymore and being able to kind of speak my truth a little bit more and address those things directly, there's actually a lot of closure that I'm receiving in this process. So I think we all heal differently, and this seems to work for me so far. So that's really the approach that I'm trying to take. It actually does give me kind of a sense of control back that was really taken from me by my dad lying about me and sending pictures of me to people and saying things about me. Which again, we'll get into later. That sounds very vague, but we'll get into that later. But it just gives me the opportunity and the control to set things straight directly, which I really appreciate and tend to prefer. So if he told you a story, please reach out to me. I would be happy to have a phone call with you or to chat with you about that and kind of unpack some of that with you. The third approach that people have recommended that I take for handling this and kind of dealing with this is much more me. And I think that this is the one that I've kind of adapted based off of a menagerie of advice I've been given. I'm a very direct person, okay? So again, chronicling this because from beginning to end, this is it's mostly because there's a lot of drama, and I don't think people really have, it's really crazy. I don't think people have the time to sit with me so I can tell them this whole story from beginning to end oftentimes, because it really does, honestly, it'll take hours. Like, I've tried doing this with a couple of my friends before, and bless their hearts for sitting there and listening to me, but I just know, like, not every person is going to have that time and availability to kind of sit there and listen to it from beginning to end in one chunk. So if I put these in videos, maybe you can watch pieces of it and then you'll get more of an understanding of the story of how this all happened. You'll be able to understand more context as to why I act the way that I do. And I think that just might make things a lot easier and a lot more simple. So yeah, I'm going to focus again specifically on the last few months of my dad's life. I also want to come out and say, before we start any of this, that I understand that you probably will be feeling a lot of betrayal, a lot of mixed emotions. You might be feeling, by learning of all of his lies after his passing, it's a lot to sit with, and it makes you rethink pretty much every experience you've ever had with him, right? What was a lie, what was true. Trust me, I understand. I live a lot of that. But please don't take this as me bashing him. Because I think that we can still hold on to those special memories, to the laughter, the way that he made you feel. And I hope you don't let any of that go and are able to kind of make space for this truth in the narrative as well. Ultimately at the end of the day, he was just a human being. He was a person. He really wanted to feel accepted. He really wanted people to like him. He really wanted desperately to connect with people on an emotional level, which is why I personally think that he lied about a lot of the things that he did. He was just desperate for connection with people. And, that's really kind of a lonely way to live. So if anything, I actually feel really sorry for him. I have a lot of empathy for my father. So with that, let's get started talking about this. So I'm going to start at the beginning. And I'm just going to tell you a brief part of the story, and then probably we'll take a break, maybe do another video or something. So starting at the beginning, we're going to start with my birthday. So my birthday, April 11th, Aries gang. I invited my dad actually to dinner for the first time, which we haven't spent a birthday together in years. My dad and I were estranged for a lot of years, kind of reconnected in 2020, 2021, towards the end of 2020 anyway. We really started to reconnect then, but I always held him at arm's length even still, just because he had a lot of boundary issues. He, again, lies about a lot of things, and I just got really sick of it. I got really sick of him having one foot in and one foot out and lying all the time, and I just needed to put up a boundary. I felt like it was unhealthy and unsafe for me. I felt like it was unhealthy and safe for my mom and my grandmother, who have always been my family, always been there, always raised me. I just felt like it was unsafe for us. So I put a pretty firm boundary up for quite a few years. Probably from, I think that was 2015 to 2020. So yeah, probably about like 5-6 years or so. Okay. Set that boundary pretty firm. So we started to reconnect. He hasn't been to a birthday in a really long time. And so this year we've been making some pretty good strides, and I felt like, you know what? I'm actually going to invite you to my birthday dinner. I'm going to invite you to my birthday dinner. It's just going to be my mom, my Nana, my boyfriend, and like, it'll just be a small thing that we're doing together. Which was actually kind of a really big deal. It was a pretty big step for me and for him for sure. My boyfriend and I and my mom, we all went to go pick up my dad because he lives down the street in an apartment. He doesn't have a car at this point. He's not driving at this point for a multitude of reasons. So we go pick him up from his apartment. He's acting kind of weird when we pick him up, and I was like, okay. My boyfriend and I are sitting in the back seat, and my dad is sitting in the front seat with my mom. They're like, my mom's driving, and my dad sits up there with her. And so as we're driving, like, I was making a couple of jokes because, again, my dad had kind of a weird energy. Just in general, like, that's a nervous tick of mine. If I feel uncomfortable, I start to make jokes, and I start to kind of like try to break the tension. I use humor a lot in those types of situations. So we were driving to my birthday dinner. We get maybe 2 minutes into the drive. I want to say we were probably like 2 minutes into the drive. And I hear my dad start to like sob in the front seat, and I see his shoulders starting to shake, and he's sobbing. And I know better, again, that's the trauma talking, I know better than to call attention to when my dad is having an emotional reaction to something. Because if I do, he tends to lash out, he tends to get bigger and just make it a much bigger thing. When I was younger, if I realized he was crying, or if anybody drew attention to the fact that he was upset in any way, he'd start breaking things. He would, when my mom drove up to a stoplight, just get out of the car. Like, he used to do all sorts of things. So I instantly just kind of like tightened up and like just pretended like I didn't know what was going on. Like, I just pretended like I didn't hear him crying, pretended like I didn't hear any of it. My mom is up there talking to him. They've known each other since they were in high school. They were like best friends for a ton of years. My mom, they used to like to call themselves dysfunctional friends. They were very dysfunctional together, but they were still very good friends. But they've known each other since high school. So she's up there dealing with him. Like, nobody honestly knows how to diffuse him better than my mom does. And so I'm sitting there just talking to my boyfriend and like hoping he's not paying attention to what's going on in the front. I don't want him to ask any questions. So I'm just mindlessly talking to him. I don't even remember what I was saying to him. I was not listening to what his response was. I just, at that point, was really trying to make it so my dad didn't feel uncomfortable. And so I hear him talking to my mom and saying something about how much pain he's in and, you know, all this stuff. And my mom's like, you need to go to the hospital. I can hear her saying that to him in the front. And he's, no. And so we're driving, and my mom, she's just like, you know what, I'm not listening to you. And so she just pulls into the emergency room parking lot at the specific hospital. She pulls into the emergency room parking lot. There's like a little circular drive where you can drop people off. She pulls up there, and my dad refuses to get out. No, I don't want to get out. No, I don't want to get out. No, I don't want to get out. My mom's like, I'm not married to you anymore. I can't force you to do anything. So she's like, you know what, we'll just take me back home. He wants to be taken back home. So she takes him back to his apartment. We drop him off there. He's a weepy mess when we drop him off, but you know, and I'm just trying to reassure him, like, you know what, it happens. Like, we all have bad health days. He's had a lot of health problems. He had multiple myeloma cancer, and he had like a rod inserted in the back of his neck. Like, so he has a lot of pain. He has chronic pain, and so I get it, you know, but I just told him, I was like, it's fine, no big deal. Try to minimize it as much as I could. And he's even texting me afterwards, like, I'm so sorry, and texting my mom, I'm so sorry. And, it's just like I found out, like, he was really just worried because he hadn't been invited to a birthday in so long that he was just like, I'm ruining everything. Like, this is like the first time she's really letting me back in. I can't believe this is happening. So, like, I can understand where he was coming from. I felt really, really sorry for him. So yeah, I just tried to leave it at that, right? So I have a birthday dinner. It was kind of awkward, but it was okay. Again, that was like some definite theatrics, right, to start off my birthday dinner, but it was okay. And so, yeah, so my birthday happens, and then the next week, because that was on, like, I want to say that was Wednesday. I think that was Wednesday. I get a phone call late Monday night from a woman. And I don't know who this lady is. I've never did. She says, this is your dad's friend. He had a medical problem. He fell and he's in the hospital. You need to get here. And so I'm just like, okay, I think it was probably like maybe 12:30 at night or something. It was late. But I'm usually up pretty late. So I throw myself together. I let my mom know. She's like, okay, let's go. She drives me to the hospital. And we get there. And I find out, like, and as soon as I get there, they have like a limit as to how many people can go into the emergency room. And so this other girl comes out. I've never seen her before. And she just kind of is like, hi, and introduces herself. And I was like, okay, I'm not really paying attention. I'm like, I don't know who you are. I just need to get in there and assess the situation and figure out what's going on. And so she's like, yeah, you can go back there. So I go back there. And when I go in, there's this woman, another woman, who's sitting there, and she's rubbing my dad's feet, and she's, calling him baby and telling him that she loves him. And I'm just like, all right, so not a friend, definitely not a friend. So it was kind of weird, and I was like, but okay, whatever. And so, yeah, so I'm just sitting there trying to assess the situation. We find out that my dad had a stroke. Okay, so he had a stroke. He apparently like got up out of bed and was like he couldn't get himself up. So his girlfriend, I find out now, his girlfriend was trying to help get him out of bed, and then he fell forward and head went straight into a wall. He almost, he was right next to a window. So we actually, for a long time in the hospital, joked that she tried to push him out of a window. But his head went through a wall, hit into a wall. And so he was having all sorts of, the problems from that. So yeah, so he was in the hospital, found out, again, stroke. We weren't sure exactly what was going on. There were some other health things where they were like, oh, he has a mass and we think the cancer is back and all of this stuff. I ended up finding out he hasn't been to the hospital. He hasn't been to the doctor in years. And he can't even tell me exactly when it was because he's kind of confused and disoriented. But he had been telling everybody and assuring everybody that he'd been going for regular checkups for his cancer because, again, multiple myeloma usually just goes dormant and you don't ever fully get rid of it because it's a bone cancer. And so, yeah, he was supposed to be going for regular checkups, was not doing that. So I'm sitting there like, okay, so I'm a problem solver. So I'm just trying to pick up on as much information as I can, trying to piece the puzzle pieces together to figure out what exactly we're dealing with here. So all I know at that point is stroke. Looks like there's a mass in the back of his head. Cancer may be back. And that's pretty much all the information we have. We know that we have to send him into a surgery of some or a procedure of some sort, and they're going to insert a little tube to try to burst the clot apart and to pull it out and extract whatever the clot is, as much of it as they possibly can, from his brain. Because apparently he had something with his heart and he should have been on a blood thinner. He was not on blood thinners because, again, wasn't going to the doctor. So his heart threw a clot to his brain. And so that's the information that we have. So we're sitting there in the hospital room with him. He keeps getting really agitated and kind of, threatening to get up and walk and all of this other stuff. I don't know his girlfriend. I don't really know. And I find out the other woman who walked out in the hallway was his girlfriend's daughter. I don't know either of these people, but at one point in time, all of us were allowed to come into the room. So we're all just kind of hanging out in there. I know they were looking at me like I was crazy because I don't tend to get very emotional. Just the way that I was raised and just, I think, kind of the way that I am, I just don't tend to get very emotional. And with my dad especially, I know that if you start to get emotional with him, it's just going to make him cry harder. So if I'm sitting there crying, if I'm sitting there, trying to comfort him and baby him, he will become full baby. Okay. So I knew, I'm like, no, the best way to handle him, again, is through jokes. And so I start to just crack jokes. I start to like make comments. I start to like all of these things. They're looking at me. I feel like I'm nuts. Like they're looking at me like, you are so insensitive. What are you doing? My dad's sitting there laughing though, because yeah. And so he was taking it well. It was able to kind of snap him out occasionally when he would start to like lapse into very weepy, sobbing, whatever. He was able to kind of snap him out of it pretty quickly. And so, yeah, I was just kind of doing what I had to do at that point, So yeah, that was like the first night in the hospital. And I knew they were going to have the procedure really early in the morning. So I left the hospital. My mom drove me, again. So like we left the hospital around, I want to say like 4 in the morning. It was probably like 4 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning or so. And I knew I needed to be back there by like 7:30, because the procedure was going to be like really early in the morning. So I was like 7:30 or 8. So yeah, so that's the first portion. I'm going to cut it there because this has been pretty long already. But yeah, that was how it went. That was the first night in the hospital. There was some extra trauma there too, which like, because, okay, so the last time my dad and I got estranged was when he had issues with his cancer. His neck had broken, and first person he called, of course, was my mom, because besties, right? So first person he calls is her. She calls the ambulance and is like trying to like, you need to like trying to talk him into calming down, right? So she calls the ambulance for him. The whole shot. I was like in finals week because I was still an undergraduate at the time, and like I couldn't make it immediately because I had like a whole day of finals. So once I finished my last final, I went to the hospital to go see him. I didn't tell him ahead of time because, I mean, I told him earlier in the day, like, hey, I'm going to stop by. I didn't tell him, like, hey, I'm coming now, though. And when I get there, he has a girlfriend there. It was a different girlfriend, obviously, because this was years ago. This was in 2015. He has a girlfriend there. And he did not take that well. He did not like the fact that my mom and I just showed up. He did not like the fact that I was in the same room as this other woman, and was acting really rude and very obnoxious. And so I told him at a certain point, because he was just being really rude to me, because my mom and the girlfriend left the room at a certain point just to give us some privacy. And he was being really rude to me. I literally just told him, like, hey, like, I'm off for the summer now because I just finished finals. Like, I can help you recover. We can, like, get through this, blah, 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 blah. And his only response to me was, like, you really, like, I can't believe you just showed up and didn't tell me you were coming. Which is, like, such a weird response to have to your only child, right? Like, I'm his only daughter. I'm only child he's ever had. I'm his only child, and that's his response to me, like, coming straight from finals week when I haven't had, like, any sleep, like, was, like, I can't believe you just showed up and didn't let me know you were coming. And I was like, if you want me to go, just tell me to go. I will leave. Like, literally say less. I do not need to be here right now. And then he kind of was, like, quiet and tried to ignore me. And I was like, you're not going to just ignore me. Answer my question. Do you want me to go or not? And then he says, go. And that was literally his only response, was go. And so I left. So anyway, yeah, that's a fun bit of past lore. Sorry, that was not chronological at all. But yeah, so I'm in this new hospital room with a new girlfriend, 2024, almost 10 years later. And, yeah, God, that went fast. Almost 10 years later, and there's this new girlfriend in the hospital room, and I was ambushed with her. Didn't know she was going to be there either. Didn't really know about her, that she even existed. Yeah, so it was like, that was like a whole other thing where I was like, ugh, like my body remembers this. My body remembers how this feels. And yeah, so anyway, that was a lot. So we're just gonna call it there because we're at about 25 minutes. Excuse me. So yeah. But yeah, in the next video, I will talk about the next day and when a lot of the drama gets unveiled, like a little spoiler of what's to come. Found out that he had lied compulsively to the girlfriend that was there, and all sorts of other stuff. So
I hope you'll join me on this journey. Please remember to keep an open mind and be kind. The truth will follow behind.